Dear friends, dear family, and of course, dear seething freaks that stalk me from Twitter. Welcome to Marchese Daily, where we talk all about some political and sociocultural analyses that will arm you with a structural framework or F of X, so to speak, to better facilitate your life and get your eyes on the prize and find your fulfillment. Today, I'm actually a little disorganized, I guess, but hey, that's Casual Friday, right? So I put up Casual Friday here because I want to do this psychology stuff more so than the news, actually. I didn't find anything in the news that I would really produce a good analysis for. So I wanted to do this psychology stuff and trying to keep it, not keep it novel, not keep it something new every day just for the sake of stimulating novelty, but also not become monotonous, also not become say the same thing every day. And so I'm browsing through, and of course, I should have a better rhythm next week because I sort of do a bunch of research and look into some things that provoke some ideas. Just before the show, I get up early. But over the weekend, I should be able to prepare ahead of time and prepare my thoughts ahead of time. Last weekend, I was preparing like the setup here. And so one thing that actually prompted or one idea that came up is I wanted to do more of this psychology, but it's like, what does that always fucking amount to? It always amounts to just fucking talking about women, dude. And, it's worthwhile to analyze them and to analyze the structure of the relationship between men and women, but at some point we got to arrive at a point of quit being such needy little fucking bitches for both men and women. It's like the issue that people cannot fucking live without is their precious coomery or their precious serotonin from the opposite sex. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't demean the nature of a relationship, particularly a very fulfilling and at peace relationship. I'm married. It's the preeminent thing, being married. But this like neediness, this obsession and compulsion as if we're all going to fucking die if we don't like instantaneously every wakeful second of every wakeful day have the company of the opposite sex is so needy. And I wonder if that neediness, I'll think about it over the weekend. I wonder if that neediness stems from it probably likely stems from most of the time the parental thing. I don't want to make the parent thing this like easy bullshit excuse go-to analysis, but I do want to hone in on that in some fashion because it seems that people's relationship to their parents, of course, affect their relationships in their future. But there's this interesting phenomenon wherein parents, like in a way, aren't trained. They aren't psychologically trained to be able to meet the majority or to a weighted degree, to the furthest possible degree, to check off the box of the needs of their children. And it seems to produce this like neediness pathology amongst like the entire fucking population. I think about, here's a good example here that's sort of getting us into this. I'll just do this extemporaneously here. And if you're in the space here, if you're unfamiliar, I'm doing Marchese Daily, which is a live stream. So I wait to have the speakers at the end. I wait to have the panel at the end for some thoughts here, roughly 30 to 40 minutes in. So you can listen in, you can watch the live stream, whatever you'd like, or you could await a moment to give your thoughts. So this neediness, actually the greatest example of this, I actually have a psychoanalysis here that doesn't have anything to do with fucking women and relationships. I think of the chores meme. I remember when, throughout my adolescence, I mean, everyone's adolescence, they become obstinate about chores and everything that comes with. And remarkably, people do this meme with chores where their parents or adults in their life made like chores were the preeminent way to garner their affection and to grow up, to be mature. And when you're a kid, you have this particular affection for that idea, of course, to get the affection of your parents and the idea of becoming an adult. Kids want to become an adult in a way. They want to be cool like us adults, particularly teenagers. That's the time where their mind is formulating an idea or a sense of independence and the pride and the need of just overall developing yourself that comes with. And so in the chores example, teenagers are obstinate for the sake of exercising their independence with that, but also they are developing their own sense of valuations and all of that. So with that said, the chores meme amounts to people living through this or living their lives pursuant to fucking chores for the sake of their parents' affection, even if their parents aren't observant of it. It's sort of like we do this thing in ourselves, and this is actually real, this is true. Part of the formulation of our superego, our moral authority, is an embodiment or an emulation or a mimicking of our parents. Our parents were the first example of authority in our lives, and so we sort of mimic that to develop our internalized authority. But of course, you do have agency, you do have free will, you can develop your own authority, and you could even sequester or eliminate parts of your internal moral authority that was bestowed unto you by your parents. In fact, sometimes resolving pathology includes that. So, followed by the affection, and followed by this construction that chores are the preeminent maturity. And so now when they have this in their minds of the parental authority, they are sort of earning their own affection for themselves through that internal authority. But isn't it remarkable how what that is? Now, we do have to earn our affection for ourselves through doing what's right. But if it was inadequately given to us by our parents, we're sort of more so trying to gain our parents' affection than our own affection for ourselves. And thus we have this neediness, this compulsion, this obsession and compulsion to do gay fucking chores and cleaning and the like. Secondarily, there's this filling the role of maturity. Oh, I'm an adult. This need to assert adulthood like you're as if you're still a teenager by doing gay fucking chores. Now, this of course doesn't mean, because some of these femtard types will listen to this and think, you're just coping to give yourself an excuse to be a dirty little pig. And it's like, well, I can understand that there is a bell curve of men that will do that. There's a bell curve of people that are degenerate, dirty, retards, insentient, of course. But isn't it always ironic how people do this meme of viewing the opposition strictly through the lens of the bell curve of the others? I've actually seen some femtard types rightfully point out some things about men that are classical cope theories and the like. The porn conversation from the other day is that, actually. Like, most of the argumentation about porn is the bell curve of both sides, but of course each bell curve is pointing out the other's bell curve. And so you're not really growing up if you're not operating from the right tail end and both criticizing the bell curve while simultaneously engaging with the right end of the bell curve of the opposite. So anyway, I digress. So the cleaning, chores, and all that. Now, people do this for the sake of waxing adulthood because they're still an adolescent in their mind. They also are afforded this classical cope theory pathology, wherein if that's the standard for adulthood, and that's the standard for, oh, I'm doing the right thing, and I've crossed the threshold of I'm a good person, and I'm doing right, and I'm being a heckin' mature adult, they lap that up, and they take that as far as they could go because it's fucking easy. Doing chores, cleaning, making your fucking bed is easy. That is the lowest level thing you're expected to do, and therefore you do not get some kind of status for that. You don't get some kind of, oh, I'm amongst the aristocrats, I'm amongst the nobility of life, of the world. I'm better than the majority. In fact, you're in the middle. You have crossed the threshold of being in the middle. Congrats, you're not a filthy, disgusting pig, but just not being a filthy, disgusting pig isn't enough to wax eminence and to feign eminence and to hold your head up high as this celestial being. So that's how you have like chores hysterics. And I've analyzed this on some of my tweets here, on some of these videos. This is how you have these millennial, soylenial, quirk chungus types making these videos of them taking cleaning even farther still to try to wax eminence. And it's like, you know, the slow motion video of them making their fucking bed with no wrinkles or something like that. So they linearize it. They falsely linearize it in that fashion. And that makes for them to cope by picking up on what I'm picking up on, that is that just cleaning isn't enough, but they're still coping by doing something that's fucking easy and not hard. It's just exercise for the sake of it. It is just the expunging of that energy, the use of that energy for the sake of using that energy. It's isomorphic to this gym problem. I'll go over this briefly because I talk about this quite a bit. It's isomorphic to the gym problem of, yeah, you're not fat, but that doesn't mean you're exactly one of the preeminent aristocrats of society. You're not exactly big. You're not strong. You're not tough. You're not alpha. You're not healthy. Just being not fat isn't enough. So that was all following from this neediness about parents and this neediness in relationships that culminates in this endless complaining and whining and dichotomy about relating to the opposite sex. Now, it is worth investigating the opposite sex, particularly their bad behaviors and some of the signs that their behavior is going to ruin your life or to hurt your feelings in some fashion. But this act like it's an existential crisis if you're not in a relationship with somebody right here, right now, instantaneously, is so needy, mammalian, and you're still not fucking getting it. You're still not getting it with how to conduct yourself, how to facilitate your life, administer your life. Especially if you're a man, because that's just neediness. That's still needy. Even if you're not saying you need sex per se, you're still needy. You're still subordinate. You're still beneath women in that fashion. And of course, that is antithetical to masculinity, because masculinity would imply you're not needy, because masculinity means that you can provide for others, which means you can provide for yourself, which means you don't need anything from anybody else. And that, of course, is broader scale adulthood in a way. That's broader scale maturity, but we all know how it goes with the hunter-gatherer type stuff, in that there is a latent, at least moderate dependence from women upon men, but the exchange is that men depend on women for reproduction. So in a way, you ultimately do. Now, this doesn't mean become neurotic. Men need women, women need men. I know that's really trite and gay, but you don't need them for like your sense of self. You don't need them for your physiology. You don't need them for your self-esteem, your confidence, for anything like that. There was another point I was getting at with that. Let me think for a moment. Something to do with the chores. Yeah, it's just it's isomorphic to the gym thing. It's lazy, it's easy to fucking clean. But people lap up the opportunity to wax Oh, I'm an adult. Oh, I'm checking off the boxes of the authority. I'm checking off the boxes of what I'm supposed to do. And therefore, I get to have this sense of self, this sense of self-esteem, and this purpose for fucking cleaning. This was sort of like in the Army, we had some funny moments about that, actually, because we saw like TikToks sometimes of these like Army types when they left the military, and they're like, and this woman, and this was just the way she spoke, and she was like, yeah, I was out of the Army, but I be carrying that discipline with me throughout my life. All my shoes are lined up by the door, dress right, dress, and I make my bed every morning. It's like, wow, so you're just as functional as the most lowest level baby adult in the world? You're not exactly significantly ahead of the rest of the fucking world. You're just like them. So anyway, that's chores and that's neediness. And that's another example. That's something outside the realm of fucking talking about women and relationships. It's sort of like I was also thinking, and perhaps it's just good to exercise thinking about this, talking about this, because I could put this all into writing and then perhaps it'll amount to a book. The Marchese book deal. There's like this ranking of issues amongst the psychology, or this ranking of expressions of this dichotomy between wanting to have it all for nothing, have, life easy, and optimize energy, and optimize in terms of your guilt and all of that. There's like 3 realms of the expression of this. The first expression, of course, is the gym stuff, because it is the most deep-rooted, direct conflict with the survival instinct. And then I would say the secondary is relating to the opposite sex and everything that comes with. It's similarly this existential threat of danger, this existential threat to the sense of self, when there's the risk of women or men hurting our feelings. And then thirdly, this one's interesting. This was another observation I had. This schematic one, this one of protecting oneself from the unknown, or protecting oneself image through the lens of, oh, I'm smart. Oh, I get it. Oh, I have it all figured out. The smartness meme is the same structure, or the intellectual or the brain version of the fitness issue. And one such example in my replies, so I was speaking, there was this guy, his name is Normie MacDonald on Twitter, at Swenjdad. Moot now, by the way, salute to the new Moot, 07 if you're watching. And he spoke of how men would ask him for advice with women, and etc. And he would ask them, okay, well, what have you tried so far? What are you doing now? What are you actively doing? And they would huff and they would puff and they would say XYZ, which basically amounted to they were doing fucking nothing to it. And they would huff and puff and get mad and, piss off and walk away. So I replied to him. I said, that is a remarkable example of an element of psychology that is known as transaction analysis. The seminal work on it was by a guy named Dr. Eric Burney, and I know some of my friends are going to resent Burney. Yeah, I know where that last name comes from. Nevertheless, it's a seminal work that provides at least some kind of structure or identification of what it means when people transact. And so the transaction amounts to, we essentially are in these 3 ego states, and ego states means how you're identifying yourself. And this is just like the superego, id, and ego. And we identify as a parent, adult, or a child. The parent is projecting authority, projecting oughts, what we ought to do, prescribing, giving advice, teaching. In a way, I'm relating to you through a parent, and you're relating to me through child. Child is seeking advice. Child is asking for help, and so on. And that's not to condescend. We use these words, parent, child, but That's not to patronize. That's not to condescend. Sometimes I'm in child. I'm often in child. We're all often going between these states: parent, child, adult. And of course, what is adult? Adult is the rationalizer. Adult is the mediator between parent and child. And so in transaction analysis, the goal of relating from parent to adult to child, and so on, is to get what's called ego strokes. Now, we also have heard and used this term as like a pejorative. Oh, you're trying to get your ego stroke. Oh, you're just trying to get XYZ thing, which is true. There is a way that people do this inauthentically to get ego strokes, and ego strokes really pursuant to not getting their needs met, but pursuant to cope theory. So in this game where he thwarted it by saying, what are you trying now? This is a classic game. You might have seen me talk about it. It is the game, actually, that essentially gave birth to the realm of transaction analysis. And the game is, why don't you yes but? And so here's how it goes. Let's say you're here about to ask me for gym advice. You say, oh, what do I do in the gym? Why don't you try Marchese method 1? Yeah, but I can't because XYZ. Well, why don't you try this and then XYZ? Why don't you try this? And ultimately, this goes until I tire or get frustrated enough such that I don't want to give any more advice, and then you walk away. Now, what's the cope here? The cope structure is, okay, I asked the expert. He couldn't come up with a reason or come up with some advice to give me that fits the circumstance, that fits the excuses. So therefore, if he's an expert and the expert can't help me, therefore I'm excused from giving myself this fitness stuff, giving myself the advice. In this guy's example, I shouldn't say this guy, it sounds like patronizing. My friend here, my mutual, I guess I could say, here, the structure would be that they wanted to excuse themselves from pursuing the relationship if he just kept giving advice, and they would say, yeah, but. They would excuse themselves, not just from the cognitive, social load, effort of pursuing the relationship, the energy, the conservation of energy instinct within that, but they're also excused from the risk of intimacy, the risk of being intimate with a woman in more ways than just sexual, because that they're excused from the potentiality of hurting their feelings. And so what you might notice here is that there's a ton of multitudes. This is why the psychology stuff gets confusing, is because there's multiple incentives and multiple copes going on into one structure. We have the optimization of energy, and we also have the risk of intimacy. And the risk of intimacy also isn't just the risk of hurt, but there's a embedded premise or presumption in there, is in that the risk of hurt feelings would also come from a risk to masculinity and a risk to identity. When we don't have an authentic and fully developed identity, when we aren't pursuing our best interests, when we're not aligning ourselves with our superego, what are we presupposing? We presuppose that we're not a good person. We presuppose that we don't like ourselves, therefore other people won't like ourselves. And so part of the pathology of avoiding intimacy is the presumption, well, they're not going to like me. And when they don't like me, it's going to hurt. And it hurts because it is going to bring forth a further advancement of my consciousness of my negative feelings about myself. They're not going to like me because I'm a bad person. And if there's that empirical evidence that other people think I'm a bad person as well through rejection, I am going to further sink deeper into a hole of rejection of the self. So I would rather avoid that altogether and operate within the confines of being able to rationalize my low self-esteem away, but without actually addressing the self-esteem by living up to what I would consider my ideal image for myself, which I don't want to do because that would most likely and most often entail avoiding or sequestering pleasure. Pleasure, pleasantries, what's easy. So there's multiple copes going on at once in this game of why don't you, yes, but. And so that payoff becomes, in the end, they're excused from intimacy or excused from the activity, and the other person doesn't give them, it discredits discredits expertise. I'm trying to speak without saying or you know. I'm trying to not with pause, but sometimes I'm speaking so fast and my mind goes faster than my words. So anyway, excused from the activity, excused from things like intimacy, and discrediting the expertise as the QED, the foolproof. I asked an expert, he or she could not satiate this problem, solve this problem, provide an f of x to the solution to this problem. Therefore, I could close the book on this the rest of my life. QED, done. Little square if you're a math guy. Now, the function of discrediting expertise as well functions to rationalize superiority. That feeling of inferiority, but the expert couldn't figure it out. The expert couldn't solve the problem. Therefore, I must be on parity with that expert. That expert must not really be an expert, must not be superior to me in any fashion. And therefore, I know now that I'm not inferior. I can now rationalize away that I am not inferior. Now, this all gets at, if you remember, I said the domains of classical cope theory that people are endlessly preoccupied and basically revolve their whole life around playing all of these games within their minds and excusing themselves. There's the fitness stuff, there's the relational stuff, and there's a third part that is schematic, the schema of one's understanding of the world. We want to understand the world. We want to prepare ourselves for it, but we also want to fit it into nice, neat rationales, nice, neat excuses for us to not develop ourselves or for us to place ourselves at the top. We got it all figured out. And this manifests when people hear something they haven't heard before, and it provokes fear. It provokes fear of the unknown. You might have heard me speak to this yesterday. It provokes the fear of unknown, which has the danger of the dangers of the unknown in and of itself, and the danger of the darkness, the danger of inadequate preparation for those ensuing dangers. Now, what are some of these dangers? Well, the danger of the unknown, it emulates the danger of darkness, let's say. But the danger of unknown is unpreparedness for rationalizing against something that might put a hole in our current schema. So we're afraid of unknown. We're afraid of stand by. We're afraid of unknown in this context. It gets real quiet, actually, when I'm not talking in here, so that's kind of funny. Now my mind's just getting all over the place. Okay, let me retrace my words here. In that context, we are afraid of unknown because there's a threat that we don't understand everything, and if we linearize our sense of self and our self-esteem based on how much we know, if we extrapolate it to, well, we know things, and since we know all of the things, since we have it all figured out, therefore we're smart QED. Since we've linearized that to say, well, I know everything. We sort of say, since I know everything, therefore I can QED, I can close the book on how smart I am. I'm necessarily smart and I know things and the like. by way of knowing everything. If we know everything, we close that book. And we need that. We need that to extrapolate our sense of self or come up with a rationale that's tangible, that's outside of the confines of behaving well, living up to our standards. We need that, or we use that as a cope. We can say, well, we're smart. I'm smart because I know everything, and therefore I'm not inferior. And therefore, if I'm not inferior, I don't need to feel like I don't need to behave. I don't need to behave myself aligned with my ideal self to gain a sense of superiority, to gain a sense or to ameliorate inferiority. I can just rationalize inferiority away by saying I'm smart, which I rationalize I am by knowing everything. So in this schematic context of trying to resolve our low self-esteem, we have this like smartness thing, and we have this I know it all thing. And so when that's challenged, it, of course, derails all of that. And then there's also just the generalized fear of there's things in the world that I don't know, which emulates the fear of being in the forest in the dark, let's say, of not knowing or not preparing yourself for the incumbent danger. So it emulates that. And so people will also do this cope. There's this cope behavior, and this is evident every time I have some kind of debate or engagement with anybody, or just any time. Like, I don't even really debate this, like any of this. And so all this is to say, in this why don't you yes but, this guy replies, man, I know so many people who ruin their lives with this kind of thinking. And so this is exactly that. It is, number one, firstly, people who don't know what they're talking about and don't know how to construct an argument for anything, because anything about their beliefs is inauthentic and isn't reasoned out. It's just nice and easy bullshit schemas to arrive at to conclude. There's also this element of I want to be able to know everything. I want to be like a smarty pants tough guy, this type of thing, but still without actually trying to be a smarty pants through things like reading, learning, pursuit of truth. They want just like easy, quick little quippy things. And so when they can't actually argue against something that they're unfamiliar with, because they're unfamiliar with fucking everything everywhere, they come up with these like emotional appeal type arguments, these emotional quips. And that's supposed to function as an argument in and of itself. It's supposed to say, well, since it makes you feel a certain way, it must not be real or true or credible. And so, man, I know so many people who ruin their lives this way. And so that's what that is. That's that emotional element. And this dork felt the need to reply to that because he doesn't like that he's unfamiliar with this games people play stuff, this transactional analysis. And when people are unfamiliar, they also find it threatening if they don't immediately understand it, pursuant to this smarty pants image. So they find that threatening, and they'll cope by discrediting it. One of my favorites is like, not reading all that, and it's like not even a fucking paragraph. That's just like cope excuse for I don't understand, I don't have reading comprehension, and I find that threatening, or I find it threatening that I don't have that, so I'm going to rationalize and say, well, actually, reading that much or talking too much means you're stupid because you can't speak in shorter terms. You know, the smarty people will be able to put it into less words. Now, of course, that is real and true, but there's always like a contextual element. There's always like an element of understanding when that's a cope and when that's not. So that's firstly. Firstly, it is, I don't understand this. I'm unfamiliar with it. It's threatening my whole smarty pants image. But I can't really argue against it because that would require energy and effort. So I'm going to argue against it by just sort of spiking emotions. People also, especially with the psychology stuff, they also don't like hearing about it, or they also don't like that somebody knows about it or it's the existence of it, because they use this stuff. A person who loves to play why don't you yes but will try to be like, that's not real, that doesn't make sense, that's not credible. They'll love to lap up this empiricism idea to say that that doesn't exist. Oh, well, because it's intangible and because you can't quantify it, it's necessarily not real and doesn't exist. That's also always one of the dumbest understandings of the world. That's also like peak Redditor. Peak Redditor is having like a 108 IQ, so you understand how to quantify things and then maybe make a conclusion from that quantity. But it's also being stupid and being a baby brain to not manage to abstract the truth and not manage to arrive at truth rationally. Arriving at truth rationally is like the exercise in intelligence. So these types will deploy some of these strategies to discredit this stuff when they also don't like that it exposes them. It exposes who they are. It exposes their little games and so on. You're overthinking it. There's no evidence to support that. Especially this, oh man, I know so many people who ruin their lives thinking this way. Now, yes, retards will take something like a book like Games People Play, or will take something like transaction analysis, and then they'll go and they'll think that every interaction has to be like this. So there's most certainly that bell curve, but that bell curve does not discredit the existence of the tail end of the bell curve. Although I think usually the arguments about that stuff go the opposite way. People try to say the existence of the tail end implies the middle doesn't exist, but retards will also try to say the existence of the middle implies that the tail end doesn't exist. So retards will take this stuff and also pathologically deploy it to try to, I know this, I know what you're doing, I know that. And it just becomes like protectionist. It just becomes like pathological protection. Or it functions to, I got it all figured out. So now this actually makes me think about when we talk about Marchese methods and the psychoanalysis type stuff. Getting this deep is important, and arriving at these truths rationally is important. I'll say one of the ways you develop this and you develop an understanding of this skill stuff, a perfect understanding of it, is it's like driving a car. When you're driving a car and there's XYZ thing, there's other car and all of that, there's dangers, there's things to look out for. Now, the first handful of times you drive, of course, you're going to neurotically look for everything. But then you start to develop some kind of intuition, some kind of reasonability, some kind of trusting your exercised skill and instinct, in that you're not paying particular attention to every car, every speed, everything in the road. But once something sticks out, once something sort of triggers that instinct, triggers your intuition, you subsequently heighten your awareness to that thing, and then you develop a strategy, develop a strategy, develop a rationale, develop a counter plan to the danger or a reaction. And so that's how you arrive at understanding this stuff interpersonally, socially. It's not always going to be there. You don't have to neurotically point your finger and watch every last second, every last interaction, every last word. But there's going to be something that arises in you. It's going to provoke some kind of intuition. As a matter of fact, this is very much deeply pre-programmed in all of us. This is like turbo, so deep in our minds and so programmed in us that we all already know how to do this. We all already know how to pick up on this stuff pick up on these transactions. You can feel, when we talk about transaction analysis, we can feel the transaction. When people play these games with us, we walk away feeling aggravating, feeling frustrated. There's something to that. So don't be afraid to investigate and analyze and try to put it in words for yourself or for others as to what's going on in these interactions. So this is all deep within us. So trust that intuition. And that is how you have a lot of these tweets that go viral or something like that, or interactions where people sort of collectively understand what's going on and collectively understand the game that's played. I just do my part trying to put it into words for everybody and analyze it and construct the linear development of the behavior. So that's deep within you. You feel it. Everyone else feels it. And a lot of interaction amounts to people just doing a sort of a poor job articulating what's actually going on. So they sort of speak to it in feelings. They speak to it in these quippy feelings that don't really arrive at this full analysis. But that's okay. That's why you have me. And that's not to necessarily criticize them in any fashion or demean people in any fashion with this stuff. So I think that's everything for a moment here. If you're in the space, stand by for speaking. I do the live stream and the space simultaneously, and then I open up the space at the end as a panel. Let's see, what are some other good thoughts I have saved here? I suppose another good example of this is, and I tweeted about this, dude, this fucking stuff about arguing over the Lord of the Rings or fucking Game of Thrones, like, seriously, this is, especially if you're a based, alt-right, fascist goy, this stuff is peak the stuff that I talk about. Fucking arguing fervently over whether or not a fucking TV show, a baby TV show or a movie or whatever, is good or not good, or people, the XYZ thing is superior than to the other. You are telling on yourself that your mind goes nowhere other than to fucking slop and to coomery. There's nothing impressive about being on the right side, quote unquote, right side of an argument about fucking movies or TV shows. And investing your energy into that is peak being a fucking soy beta neckbeard type. So yeah, I see that stuff and it's just so much of that. I'll say, actually, real quick, I'll try to make this quick, this last topic here, just a thought I had as I looked at some of my notes here. I see, amidst all of this psychology stuff, isn't it remarkable? I see that, like, women will, and not to shit on women, right, not to talk about women, but this is actually important, and it's not particular to the relationship between men and women. But women are imbued or inscribed or born with a little bit more of a proclivity for this interpersonal social skill stuff. They do pick up on this stuff more so than the average man. And therefore, they sort of like totally mind fuck the average man because they will allude to this stuff. They don't do a good job of articulating it. So it's evident in all of these classic arguments between men and women about like, well, you said you wanted flowers, so I got them, so why are you mad? And it's, well, they're talking about authenticity. They're talking about the intention. And insentient, middle of the bell curve males don't understand that interpersonal type stuff. So the average woman, in her experience of this, thinks herself some magic psychology powers, intuition types, you know, oh, woman's intuition. So they think that they have like these magic psychology powers that place them ahead of men. They sort of abuse this as a weapon to assert dominance over men, to assert superiority in some fashion, pursuant to that envy of the male capability to transcend their feelings and impulses in favor of rationality, free will, and joy, fulfillment, self-esteem. So they love to talk about their magic, psychology, intuition powers, and everyone rightfully picks up on how retarded and wrong that is by doing like the memes that I posted sometimes where it's like I think it's an old X-Men thing of Charles Xavier, whatever his name was, in his super name was, where he's like, epically epic, mind fucking and lightning and all that. And then the picture beside it is a blind guy going like this. So it's like women with their magic psychology powers, using their magic psychology powers to detect you're an incel online, but then detecting whether or not a man's going to beat them or something. So isn't that funny? And isn't it funny how they will use and abuse this as if they're mature, yet simultaneously be totally beholden to their feelings and impulses, more so than men? I think about this thing that was going around where it's like women were saying that it's always bad that, and I got you in a moment, I'll wrap this part up, where the women think basically essentially, well, when they cheat, it's right, and when men cheat, it's wrong. And they think that's more sophisticated because it's pursuant to some kind of emotional discrepancy or understanding that the relationship's not meeting their needs in some fashion or vice versa. And it's like, you're still subordinate to feelings and impulses. You're still beneath that stuff. You don't have some magic intuition. You have these magic psychology intuition powers, but as soon as you have to apply that to examine yourself and examine your tendencies and your proclivities, and upon examination arrive at a strategy to sequester them, suddenly they're like blind. So anyway, that's that magic psychology intuition powers. I'm going to open up the panel here. I got my buddy here who requested to speak and has been patient. He's kind of into this stuff. This is Will here. I will stand by for a moment while it places him in. And we got you here. Will, what's up, bro? What are your thoughts? I know you're into this type of stuff, so. I can't hear you. What's going on here? I don't know if it's you or it's me. According to my audio here that's going into my live stream, it does say it's coming into the live stream when I press the volume button. So let's see if this will. I'm using my mic. So yeah, unfortunately, I can't quite hear you. I don't know if it's my system or not. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it coming from you. I see you're speaking here, but you want to try leaving and then coming back, and maybe that'll do it. In the meantime, I'll check my stuff here. Got one other listener. Let's see. Do I have to keep you guys entertained in the meantime, or can you bear with me here? Can you not get stimulation for several seconds here? Can you do that? Can you guys be based and epic and red-pilled while we're waiting here? All right, he's back, and he requested. Let's try that one more time. It might be my system, so I'm sorry if it's my system here. Earlier, I had my stream set up, and I had to delete this microphone as a source and then replace it in, and that seemed to work. So, all right, I see you're a speaker here. Let's test this out. Still no go. I cannot hear you at all. How do I get this to go through here? It's got to be Twitter. Maybe it's the system. I'm not too sure. Maybe if we have, I have one other listener here. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to listen in or to try presenting yourself in the space as not anonymous. Let's see. I got some of my other friends liking the live stream here, liking the space. So What's up, all my friends? What are you guys, babies? You still asleep, huh? Is everybody a big baby still asleep? I set the stream 1 hour later, and you guys are still asleep or something? Don't you all have jobs, huh? Don't you all have a place to be? Aren't you up by now? Can't you just jump in while you're getting ready? All my friends here. Loyal Marchese Maxers, I see it says that I had 20 people in here, either right now or 20 people throughout the time here. So you guys, 07 to the loyal Marchese Maxers. 07, Will, I appreciate you trying to speak here. I'm sorry I can't hear you. We'll stand by for a moment. Maybe you could leave a comment on the broadcast or the space, and I'll read it, and we could go over it a bit since I can't hear you. Then in the meantime, let's see what else I got for other thoughts. I'll give one other final thought about thoughts, feelings, psychoanalyses, cope, classical cope theory. I would say for you, for your life, just develop your consciousness of there's a dichotomy of pursuing what's right and pursuing what's good, I should say, and pursuing what feels good, avoiding what's wrong and avoiding what feels wrong, what feels bad. And fundamentally, this is where eyes on the prize, finding your fulfillment comes from as my slogan, my exercise, the foundational telos, the foundational axiom of Marchese methods. Eyes on the prize, finding your fulfillment means that you cannot rationalize or escape your mandate to become who you want to be the best that you want to be. Now, we all have separate skills and capabilities, so that might seem scary at times to, let's say, you really want to be like an NBA player, right? So obviously the likelihood of that is low. The skill required to become that might be a level of skill that you do not have, but that doesn't imply that you have to, like when you go and pursue that and you try, amongst that, you're going to find solace and fulfillment in actively, seriously trying. And when you actively, seriously try just to what's naturally your best capability, and that's to say that because some people think that you have to self-flagellate or you have to, spend 16 hours a day on something. The 16 hours a day or the capability to spend 16 hours a day on something means that you love it and it comes naturally to you in a way. This speaking, right, you could see that I can speak like this for an hour. It comes relatively natural to me. My mind just goes. And so with that, you'll come to an understanding of it has to simultaneously be something you love and want to be and become, while also coming naturally to you. Now, naturally, be careful. Don't make that a cope. Your barometer for whether or not it's natural doesn't imply that it is easy. It just implies that you're willing and capable to do it, of doing it, despite the prospective work or effort or to do it, or the work and effort to develop that skill. In my case, with this stuff, I read books, I write, I exercise my vocabulary. And so what you'll find there is, in a way, an identification of what you feel your mandate actually truly is. We often impose these mandates upon ourselves to be something like an NBA player, really still because we're still playing the game, or we're still falsely attaching our sense of self to some tangible externality for no reason other than linearizing it as a way to bulwark against the linear low self-esteem. Oh, if I reach it at that level, I've linearized my aristocracy, my sense of self, my exceptionalism to a far enough degree such that I can consider myself exceptional. How you can feel or how you can consider yourself exceptional is a daily, earnest, authentic pursuit of what you naturally want to be and what you naturally love and what aligns with your skill set. And even if you don't become big, right? I'm doing this in theory. This is isomorphic to that NBA example. In theory, you do this like essentially pursuant to getting like filthy rich and famous in a way. Now, I'm not entirely sure I'll get there. I think I have a skill set and I'm just using it and deploying it and developing it. And whether or not I get there doesn't even matter because I know I made the authentic effort every day to do so. And there's nothing saying that there's a time limit to it. You could pursue this type of stuff for many, many years until you cross that threshold because fundamentally, what the fuck else do you have to do? Watch TV, play games, whatever. How we talked about yesterday and the day before, how boring does that get? That's the boring thing. Just because it's novelty, stimulus, and feels good and is pleasant doesn't mean it's fun. The fun comes in having something to do that's pursuant to something you authentically, spiritually love. And in my case, I guess it amounts to coaching, therapy, speaking, ideas, reading, politics. So I think those are my final words here. I'll check if Will left a comment. Yeah, and Will says, pursuant to the point about women sort of have this psychic capability. Some of them do pursue that skill. Some of them are skilled in that. I'll always say, though, their cockiness is unwarranted with it because amongst many things, the average woman might be more skilled in something like this than the average man, but in no way do they come remotely close to so much as holding up a candle to the most skilled or amongst the most skilled men in things like psychology and all that. I mean, who are the founders of all this stuff? These guys were like philosophy writing bros. These guys all wrote like several books. They all developed this stuff from scratch. They rationalized it from scratch, and we still use it to this day. So let's see. Will sent me a meme here. When only 14% of your citizens go to church on a regular basis, 73 out of 100 marriages end in divorce. You've got 500,000 abandoned. You're the European leader of children raised by single parents and blah, blah, blah. True bastion. Yeah. LOL Russia moment. So I think that's everything for today. Apologies, Will. I couldn't get you on to speak here, but it's good to see you. You could tune in live Monday through Friday. I'm going to do 8 a.m. pursuant to that poll I did and where everybody seems to start tuning in. Oh, I have 3 comments on this space. I think that's okay. Yeah. So live on the air Monday through Friday, streaming to X, Rumble, YouTube, talking all about this psychology stuff. If you would like coaching and or based therapy, you can head on over to marchesemethods.com. I do one-on-one sessions for $50 for an hour. If you do 4 sessions up front, it's $120 across 4 hours, so it amounts to $30 per hour. We can talk all about what you want to get out of life and how you can analyze yourself and your circumstances and all that. I will say too, there's people, in case they missed it, I say based therapy, and that's sort of like a meme and all of that. I most certainly deploy therapeutic techniques, but I am not fully licensed yet, which means I cannot take insurance. And if you're just the type that you want the license and you want the full credential threshold crossed, I'm letting you know that so that you can make an informed decision. I will say though, if you're one of these guys online that says, "Oh, school is gay," and "Oh, the credentials are gay," and "the social sciences are gay," and they're a globo homo, it's like, well, why do you care then anyway? Especially because I'll just tell you from my view of it, it's really like so gay and trite. A lot of the stuff. I anticipate there will be authentic techniques, but when you have to take class, it's like, at the council level, it's important to know that your clients will want to develop a relationship with you. And the therapeutic relationship has been demonstrated to be the number one. It's like, yeah, crazy concept, but yeah, okay, your therapist kind of has to be your bro in a way. Your therapist counselor has to be a friend in a way. I really needed to go to grad school and read that in a textbook to learn about that. And then, of course, their obsession and compulsion with empiricism. So that's coaching. If that feels a little bit like too much of just an investment of time and energy and all of that for you, you can head on over to DM me or email me, marchesemethods@proton.me, where I have a Discord server for $5 a month. You can text me, message me all day, every day, and talk amongst some other people, although nobody's really talking in it much at the moment. For $5 a month at my Discord, and you could text me, and if we get really deep into it, I'd be more than happy to do like a voice call with you pursuant to that. And then you could also or if you just have a comment about the stream, or if you have one singular question, you can head on over to entropystream.live/Marchese Methods. I have it in my descriptions to send a super chat. They haven't approved me for revenue yet, but they gave me the link. So I'm not entirely sure that it'll even work, but it's worth a shot. Over the weekend, I'll investigate coming up with some other means by which to super chat. Perhaps that will work. So that's everything. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks, Will. We'll try to make sure it works next time, and I will see you on Monday.